Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of the Bush League Huddle. My name is Anthony, or as all my friends like to call me, Knack. I've got my co-stars here, Raj and Fab. What's up, boys?
What's up?
Salute.
Um, quick little shout out to Italia, bro. What a game that was this afternoon. Had to wait to the last second, the 98th minute to be exact, to have a draw with Croatia and go through to the round of 16. But as we both know, Fab, they never make it easy for us, right?
No, it was a stressful second half. I was frustrated. I don't think I've ever been more upset about us qualifying as I am today, just because of like how it happened and like what they had to do. And it's just
Yeah,
I'm
because it feels
happy.
like it doesn't deserve it, right?
Yeah, like I'm happy we made it through, sure, and we actually have a decent matchup against Switzerland, right?
Hey,
But
Swiss has
then
played good.
they are playing good. They have a very good team, but I feel like of all of the teams we could have faced, that's probably a good option for us to face, like where we actually have a chance of beating them and going further. But then beyond that, like this is not a team that is put together where you have a lot of optimism about how far they can go, like
Yeah,
at all.
agreed.
But that's a different conversation.
I'm just curious, is there a parallel team in the NFL that's like Italy that wins so many bad games where they probably shouldn't win?
I think it was like the Vikings before Kirk Cousins. They always finished like 8 to 9 and then made the playoffs. There was a period of time where like they always had a losing record and making the playoffs. Even any team that
Seattle
has a losing
Seahawks.
record, yeah, any team that has a losing record and makes the playoffs, that's who you can compare them to. Yeah,
Okay.
I
I
think that's
get you.
fair. I think that's fair.
And for you, Raj, you should be thankful because with Italy's win, that means England has now qualified automatically, no matter what happens tomorrow. So they could finish. They're automatically guaranteed to finish minimum third place and go through to the round of 16. So you see, be
I
thankful.
I am thankful. Probably just delaying the inevitable. To be honest with England,
Here we go.
we know it's gonna happen. Let's be real. As
Yeah,
one of our buddies said, they're basically the Leafs of world football. So
yeah.
So
It's a very good comparison,
it's
actually.
not coming home, or is it coming, or they're going home. That's it. They're
They're
going
going
home.
home.
They're leaving the trophy behind, most likely.
they're
Yeah,
on
I'll
their
take the
way.
silence as
They're
a
they're on
yes.
their way. They're on their way. Take that however you want it. Something is on their way, whether it's home or
But
we'll keep it at that.
jokes aside, though, Spain is very, very scary. Like
Yeah,
those wingers are
seriously,
very,
man.
very scary. It's gonna be
Yeah,
a problem for any team that they go up against.
agreed. So switching gears into the NFL side, there wasn't very much news. It was a quiet week, as expected, really, in the NFL. Basically, the only news we heard was Ayuk has requested a meeting with the 49ers to speak and see kind of where it stands. He's upset in contract talks. He spoke to Ryan Clark, apparently, who broke the news. Yeah, upset where contract negotiations are going. Says he's prioritizing the 49ers, but he's not opposed to playing elsewhere if the 49ers don't want to compensate him like he feels like he wants to be compensated. So not much going on in the NFL world. So we thought, what better time?
Except for Paris Fashion Week, all the players at Paris
Oh,
Fashion Week
right. I saw
wearing
Burrow and
wearing
Chase
absolutely
there.
ridiculous clothing.
Yeah, I don't understand, but yeah, I
That's
guess
news. Yeah,
Slow news day,
that's
very
yeah, that's
slow news week,
it's a slow. Yeah, it's a slow news
very
very
day.
slow news
I
slow
week.
didn't even
news
I didn't
week.
even know about that actually. That's actually news for me right now, live
Because you're
as
not a
it's happening.
fashionista, you're not a
I had
fashionista.
no idea.
Yeah,
That would
yeah,
beg to differ.
You're not
it's okay.
avant garde.
I'm just guard.
um, moving on. So we decided, yes, basically we decided to do another mailbag episode where we ask you guys to ask us any questions you want. It could be football related, it could be personal related, it could be whatever you guys want. We got a lot of questions here that we're going to answer in this next episode. So I guess without further ado, let's dive right in with question one. So first guy asks, who's one guy on each of your do not draft lists, regardless of ADP? Raj, what do you got for us?
So I had to go a little different route of what I previously have done with regards to my do not draft guys. I think it's been pretty well documented, but I did go with Chris Godwin.
Mm.
The reason being, I feel like there's just not as good of a rapport that he had with Tom Brady as he had with Baker Mayfield. Even though he had a relatively solid season, I believe it was like 80 catches, 90 catches, 1,000 yards. For me, a big part of drafting guys is just having fun watching them. And Chris Godwin's probably one of the most boring wide receivers there is. But from the deeper stats perspective, 33% of his catches, 33% of his 83 catches came in 2 games. He had one 10 catch game and one 8 catch game. Afterwards, he had 5 games of 3 catches or less. And only 2 touchdowns, I believe. I think he had like 2 or 3 touchdowns. So low touchdown amount, not really a lot of explosive plays, scattered amount of catches, and it feels like they're trying to find his replacement. They signed Sterling Shepard, our boy FAAB Sterling Shepard, and they also drafted Jalen McMillan, wide receiver from Washington. Those are 2 guys who look like they're going to be slot players. So I think if I look at the ADP, I know it's regardless of ADP, but ESPN has him as the 32nd ranked wide receiver above the likes of Amari Cooper, Deontay Johnson, and even Christian Kirk. So I would avoid him at that cost.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I disagree with you, and I don't know how long he's signed there for. I know you mentioned that they might be looking for a replacement for him in Sterling Shepard, but I don't know. I know he signed
I
an
wouldn't say replace.
extension, but
I wouldn't say replacement, but it seems like they're trying to find competition for him. Like, did they really need another slot guy, a guy who's exactly the same player as Godwin, who can't really win on the outside, fully only working in the slot? So
Yeah,
Fab, who you got?
no, I was just gonna say that was a big shock when Sterling went over there because I was expecting him to retire.
I
Like I
I thought he
think
was
that
gonna retire too.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, that was the whole thing
there
by
was
him. Yeah,
talks about it.
and then just randomly he signed for 1 year, whatever it is. I think it's because the
Yeah.
relationship that he has with Baker. To be honest, I think that's the
Oh,
big
from
deciding
OU.
factor. Yeah,
They went to OU.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So again, to your point about like how he had a rapport with Brady, maybe not so much with Baker. This might be even adding to that too. So I chose Stefon Diggs. I know we spoke about him a little bit on the pod, and I also made myself a little bit clear on like how I'm not a fan necessarily of not so much of that move, but like of what that does to the wide receiver room in general. And plus, the Stefon Diggs as a whole, I mean, he's getting a little bit older too. But I was looking at his numbers from last year. The beginning of the year, like the first 9 weeks, he tore it up, he killed it, and then from like week 10 on, he was ranked. I have it in front of me here. He was ranked wide receiver 44 on a points per game basis, 9.8 fantasy points per game basis from week 10 on to the end of the season. So it's definitely not someone that those are not the points that you want to get from a guy that you hope to be your wide receiver one. And that was when he was in a situation where he was the guy, where he was the number one target. Yeah, fine. They had other pieces around him too. They had Dalton Kincaid and all that stuff, and Dawson Knox, and they had other wide receivers there as well. But he was still the guy in the locker room where he would be commanding all the targets. Now he's going to a new situation, new quarterback. I mean, CJ Stroud is spectacular. There's no doubt about that at all. But you wonder about is he going to command the wide receiver room? And I know that we all have some polarizing opinions on that. And that's fine. I don't know if he will or if he should necessarily. And because of that, like I have a little bit of pause just drafting him because there's so much uncertainty right now. Like CJ, I don't have any uncertainty drafting CJ Stroud. I have uncertainty drafting his wide receivers, especially where they're going. Like I like Nico Collins a lot, but even him as a wide receiver one, he's going like wide receiver. His ADP right now is wide receiver 13. That's okay, but like Diggs at wide receiver 19, when there's guys like Cooper Kupp, DK Metcalf, Amari Cooper, which you know have a much stronger chance of commanding a lot more targets and really being the guy there and being the number one, the alpha. And Diggs might think he's an alpha still, which I'm sure all wide receivers do. I just don't know necessarily if that offense sees him that way. And for me, like that's why I'm fading him on all my drafts.
I think honestly, I agree to a certain extent, but I think he's gonna come in and they're gonna they're gonna want to get him involved early and often. Just because I think like he does bring that presence, right? He is the veteran guy, and I've been on record here, gushing about Nico Collins, and I think
Yep.
that guy is inevitable. Like I think he's going to just take over at a certain point. But we also, we saw that Diggs tailed off when, we've mentioned this as well, I believe, in cold weather, and now he's playing in a dome, and stats might be a little bit easier to come by. Stroud is going to sling the ball around. I don't know. Again,
Man,
we were
See,
saying
but
how much we didn't really like Cooper because of Deshaun Watson. Like, I'm taking Diggs before Amari Cooper.
man, I hope the cold weather thing is bogus though, because if that's really the reason why his production failed, like that's concerning, man. That
For
that's
sure,
really that's
yeah,
for
really
sure.
concerning. And
100%.
I'm not
also,
saying that's definitely not
and
saying
and,
it's not.
and your
Yeah,
point, Knack, I think they don't have a choice to give him the ball because we know how he acts when he doesn't get the
Right.
ball. And
Exactly.
yeah.
like real to put it more real life football, man, that's gonna be a distraction, I think,
But
especially
but
for a young team with a young nucleus.
but then Raj, you touched on something interesting, right? Like you want like guys that are fun to watch. Like is Stefon Diggs going to be fun to watch when he has those games where he puts up duds, and then the next game he complains, and then he gets more
I,
targets, and
I think the past two I had him last year. Compared to previous years, he was not fun to watch. He looks like a possession receiver. He doesn't look like the explosive receiver that we first saw. Well, not only in Minnesota, but we first saw the first 2 or 3 years
yeah,
where he had like 115 catches, like 1,500, 1,600 yards with Josh Allen. Like he doesn't look like that receiver at all. And I think he lost a step. Like I think he's definitely lost a step, and he's at 31,
yeah.
31 years old, and that's past the peak years of a typical of a wide like an elite wide receiver. So I think your point is pretty fair. Personally, I would be in agreement, especially what I had last year. It was really rough to have him in the second half. I agree with you.
For sure. For sure. I'll quickly spit out mine here. Mine is going to be Travis Etienne.
Mm.
He's going as high as running back number 9 on a lot of boards, ahead of players like Josh Jacobs, Rashad White, James Cook, who are all in command of their backfields. The coaching staff really likes Tank Brigsby, and it's his second year now, so I think he's going to be a lot more heavily involved. Uh, Etienne in the red zone was not that guy. Like his touchdown production was not bad last year. He still scored 11 touchdowns, but his yards per carry went from 5.1 in 2022 to down to 3.8 last year. So you could tell that he wasn't that guy, and like Brigsby's going to be that guy who can run through the tackles, get the goal line work, and all that stuff. So I think I think it's going to really hurt his value. And to be quite honest, Josh Jacobs, Rashad White, James Cook, like I'm taking all these guys way before. And I just hearing what's the coach's name?
Doug Peterson.
Doug Peterson. Hearing Doug Peterson talk about Bigsby is like gushing about this guy. It just makes me feel like this could become a 50-50 split at some point, and I'm not ready to pay the high value for its end. So I just want to avoid him altogether.
Trivia time. How big do you guys think Tank Bixby is? Take a guess.
I think he's like 5'7".
5'5", I think 5'8" or 5'9".
Okay. So yeah, that's what I'm like. His name's Tank, and I'm like, he's like 5'11", 5'10". I thought this guy was like
It's
six.
quads,
I thought,
man. He's
I thought
he's massive. He's a
Well,
big
hold
boy.
on
oh
a
yeah, he's
sec.
not.
What does a tank look like? It's short and it's wide and it's stocky. So yeah,
I don't know. I was thinking like Brandon Jacobs style, like 6'4", like massive, like
dude,
two
Brandon
three,
Jacobs
or
is a freak. Like we talk about Derrick Henry
Yeah,
being a
that's I
freak.
would.
Before Derrick Henry was Brandon Jacobs. The guy was a 6'4", 265 pound running back.
it was
Like
like Dante
and ran a
Culpepper playing running back.
yeah, and the guy ran a
Yeah,
four
it's
four.
yeah,
Like
it's
get out
crazy.
of here.
It's
And he couldn't
crazy.
bend. He could not go low. Like I
No,
never saw a more upright runner. But back to your point,
Miss Brandon
Fab.
Jacobs.
It's yeah, me too. Etienne, I have big time reservations. Didn't think he looked good last year, and exactly the short yardage stuff. He was not good on short yardage last year. Small running back too. He's really a small guy.
You know, it's funny. I think there's a trend right now. We're all fading the guys that were on Rogers' team last year.
Diggs, Etienne.
True, Etienne.
There's no sign. Well, you guys are in love with Kyle Pitts, so
So
Well,
when we
I'm not. Hey! I'm not in love, but I'm not fading the guy. Like, let's give him a chance in with
yeah,
a
like
with a
I'm not
competent
another
guy.
chance, another chance.
One more chance. One more chance. We're gonna move on here, guys. Second question is, it was announced that Matt Ryan will be inducted into the Ring of Honor. Is Matt Ryan a Hall of Famer, Fab?
I
Oh
think
boy.
more yes than no, and I'll revert
Wow.
to
Interesting.
it's on the French, but gun to my head, I think it's yes, and the reason is because and I think it's Mike Greenberg has a good quote um, about sort of like categorizing players if they are Hall of Famers or not. Like, can you write the history, the story of the NFL without this person? And I don't think you can with Matt Ryan because he
Yeah, but
also
for
But
more
he won.
negative, for more
No, but
negative
he
than
won an
good.
not his fault though.
MVP.
Not his
He won
fault
an
though.
MVP. He won offensive player of the year. He multiple Pro Bowls. He's top 10 in passing yards. He's top 10 in passing touchdowns. I don't know exactly where, but I know like it's like 6 or 7 or something.
Is
Seventh
he
in
top
passing
10
yards.
Yeah,
Seventh in passing
in
yards. Ninth
TDs?
in TD. Ninth in TDs.
Nice, nice.
yeah. Like those are Hall of Fame numbers, right? Like if so, for me, it's more of a yes than a no. I know there's the talk about how like the Hall of Very Good, you know what I mean, and he might just be there.
See, like he's yeah,
But
like
but I feel
that
like
would be what I would think.
I feel the whole MVP thing like gives him that edge, and the fact
Yes.
that he was there for so long, and
Totally.
he.
I hate one-offs though.
What do you mean he hit one offs? Like just because the MVP he deserves to be in, like that
Like
one off
like
is
like is Cam Newton an MVP? He was
No.
an MVP guy. He won, like is
Matt
he
Ryan
a
was a
Hall of
way better
Famer? Like
QB though. Matt
yeah,
yeah,
Ryan
but
was a
yeah,
way better
100
QB.
100%. But like that's
well,
why I hate like sometimes that
well,
one-off of like
I think it's a holistic
how
point of
many
view,
All
right?
Pros did
You
Matt
got
Ryan have?
4, I think.
All Pros
Sorry,
No.
no,
or
no,
Pro
sorry, Pro
Bowls?
Bowls. Excuse me,
Pro
Pro
Bowl's
Bowls.
four.
He had one All Pro, and it was
One All
probably
Pro.
the MVP
Yeah,
season, right? He had to have had an All Pro for that. But like, how many did he have after that, right? So that's
None.
what I'm
yeah,
saying. That's where I have that word one off. Is like, okay, he had that great season. It was unbelievable. Don't get me wrong. And I'm
but
not saying he's not a bad quarterback,
I
but
think you have to look at it at his entirety of his career, and the fact that he spanned as long as he did, he was consistent for as long as he was, and in the highest level of football, and finished top 10 in so many statistical categories, and even I think he finished 12th overall in games played, which is again huge. So I think that has to be the the factor that pushes him over the edge. I get your point about the whole one-off thing there because yeah, one MVP, fine, whatever. But you
it's not
look at
just one
everything else that
MVP.
comes with
Fine,
it.
but
No, I get what you're
sure.
saying though. It's a
So
valid
so
point.
the All Pro thing is a very valid argument. My counter to that, Knack, is NFC 2010s. Like who's making All Pro
It
every year?
was
Aaron
yes,
Rodgers, Drew
yes, yeah,
Brees, Russell
yeah. It
Wilson. I
was
think
tough. Definitely
Yeah,
tough.
it's very
yeah,
But look,
it's
but
very
look,
tough. But
but also wait. But
yeah,
also, we're talking. We just named two Hall of Fame quarterbacks right there, right?
for sure.
Who's making the All Pros? You name them, and they're going to be in the Hall of Fame.
For sure. But if I look at Matt Ryan's stats, like really solid, like 381 TDs, 183 INTs, like really solid touchdown interception ratio. He was basically always above. Like he had a stretch where basically from 2012 to 2020, actually until the rest of his career, he was above 65% completion percentage, right? Like even QB rate, he's always in the 90s. He flirted with some 100. And to me, if I look at, so I think there's a few things with the Hall of Fame. I think they're letting in more guys now than before. I think it's easier to get in. It's to the point where it's like it's almost as easy
And
as the
people have made
baseball.
comments about that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Deion Sanders has made comments. A lot of people made comments. But if I look at some comparable guys who QBs who made the Hall of Fame without, I don't think an MVP. I might be wrong, but definitely not a Super Bowl ring. Warren Moon and Dan Fouts. Warren Moon, fantastic player. He played for Seattle, played for Houston. Dan Fouts, he played his entire career with the Chargers, like the early odds Chargers with like Kellen Winslow. They never won anything. I don't think they won MVPs, and they still got in. Granted, it's the early NFL where they kind of set the bar in terms of new age passing, but I think those are guys that help Matt Ryan get in because, to Fab's point, really good body of work. Played almost in his entire career with one guy. The 2016 season, I think, gets him in, and I
Mm.
hate for him that they didn't win it because he was fantastic that season. He was fantastic in the playoffs. He was fantastic in the Super Bowl. But Kyle Shanahan, we saw he just can't complete he can't complete games in the big time moments. So for me, he's a Hall of Famer. I'm just surprised Fab didn't take this time to mention Eli Manning.
Yeah, let's
Well,
not even give him the opportunity.
well, there's nothing to
Well,
mention.
Honestly,
He's first ballot, guys. You heard it here
okay,
first. He's
that's a
first
question
ballot.
for another day. There's no question about Eli
The guy
Manning. So
still
let's
holds
just
the
move on.
record for most
Let's
passing yards
move
in the
on.
playoffs. With
Honestly, we'll end with this though. Like he is part of the two biggest collapses in NFL history, which is yes, that Super Bowl where it was 28-3 late third quarter, and then there was also the 33 nothing halftime lead against the Vikings, which they came back and won. I think it was 36-33 if I'm not mistaken.
Shit, I forgot
So
about
he'll
that one.
always have that blemish or those two blemishes
Yeah.
on his resume, which I understand it's not all him, but at a certain point you're up
Yeah.
33, you got to close games. You're up 25 with 1 quarter to go in the Super Bowl, you got to close that out. Got to make some first
But do you
downs.
think he's in that? I don't think. I don't know if maybe I missed it. But
Honestly, I don't think he's first ballot. If he
yeah,
gets in, I wouldn't be surprised, but it also would not like shock me if he didn't go in. Like I wouldn't be totally shocked, but I look, I'll lean a little bit more to yes, but it's very fringe.
I
I
know,
think.
we got to move on, guys. But I'm just really curious. Do you guys think Phil Rivers is in?
Like a similar type guy, except for
no,
he didn't go to a Super Bowl,
And no
right?
MVPs.
And he didn't win MVP, and I don't think he was an All Pro. So
he's the
I have
definition of
Matt
Hall of
Ryan
very good.
first. I definitely have, yeah, I have Matt Ryan
Like
ahead of him for sure, just because of what he's done.
Matt
Yeah.
Ryan
Like
also has
I can't
he's higher up in all
discredit
the
the
statistical
MVP,
categories too. Matt Ryan is
right?
up.
Like
He's higher than Philip Rivers in all the statistical
yeah, for
categories
sure.
as
And I'm
well.
not going to discredit the MVP, right?
Yeah,
Like if you're comparing two players, like yeah, that guy
Debate.
did win the
yeah.
MVP at
Huge.
least once and the All Pro.
You
So
know
like
who
you
else
got to
is
step
ahead of
up.
Philip Rivers? Eli Manning.
Okay, so we have a gentleman here whose fantasy league is discussing changing using their waiver priority to FAAB. So he wants to know what are the pros and cons about using FAAB. So FAAB is um, uh,
FAAB.
Yes,
FAAB,
it's not me.
which is free agent auction budget. So basically, what it is you're kind of allocated $100 a year. It's fake play money, but you're allocated that, and that's what you use to bid on players on the fantasy waiver wire. So basically, taking waiver priority out of the equation, and everyone has a chance to bid. Same thing that what you would do on a Tuesday night bid, and then as of 3 a.m. you would find out who you got or who you didn't get, and then you could see what others bid, so you can kind of see their patterns on what they bid on other players too, which is really cool. So I guess pros is what I just mentioned is you don't have to hoard waiver priority and play that kind of strategic play, whereas like, oh, I'm going to keep it and then maybe trade it to someone so they pick up, like it's definitely a different game, and you just have an option to always be able to pick up the guy you want. And another, if I could add to that, if you drop a player and he goes on waivers, you can pay and bid on him right away. Whereas in waiver priority, he's got to clear waivers before you yourself has a chance to get that player back. So he has to become a free agent and you have to pick him up as a free agent. You do not have the option to pick him up on the waiver. Um, I don't know. I guess con. I personally, we did it. We switched in our league this year, and I really can't find a con with it. I think it's just a lot better. I guess
Yeah,
con is knowing how to do it strategically, so
Yeah.
yeah.
you
The
don't
learning
end up
curve
with
might be a
the
con.
learning
That's
curve.
about
Exactly.
yeah. That's about
That's the
it.
learning curve is you don't know how much to spend right away or how
Yeah,
much to keep for the end of the year and stuff like
Exactly.
that. And
It's
I think
yeah,
fun.
I think Rod, you can kind of continue on that point because you did save some to the end of the year and
Yeah.
seeing how it kind of benefited you
Yeah,
towards the end.
everyone has a big like a different strategic play on that. Like I think the key thing with Fab is that you're always like you said Fab Knack, like you're always in the game. Like you lose a player and in non-Fab leagues you're screwed, man. Like
yeah,
you gotta wait till you get number one waiver priority. Whereas hey, I could just blow all my money on this backup. Hey, I'm still in it, right? So
yeah.
I know on our league like there was some apprehension towards it. There was a bit of concern, but I think by the end of it, everyone but Stamati
I
really
think
really
Lucas maybe too had a little didn't really they preferred
I
the
think
waiver
I think it
priority.
was more the unknown, right, than anything else, right? Like it's that there was that apprehension, but Yeah, Nak, your last point about being like, and Roger hit on it too, like being in on the player that you just dropped is huge. Because
Yeah.
how many of us
Oh
have
my
dropped
god.
a player by accident, and we're like, shit, like I
Gu-
gotta wait now from the clear waivers. Hopefully he does. Hopefully nobody saw it. Like there's all this stuff where it's completely out of your control. And another big pro, in my opinion, is that I don't have to be up at 3:30 in the morning, like looking
Yeah,
at like free
that
agents.
was my last point. That was my
I
last
can
point.
actually sleep soundly on Tuesday nights, which is wonderful.
I
Yeah,
know, and
wait, because that would be another con to keeping the
Yeah,
waiver is that if you don't want to use that priority and you don't want to, use your waiver and lose your priority, you got to get up at 3 in the morning when everyone does go on free
yeah.
agency and pick up players and
guys, we're
whatnot.
still getting up at 3 a.m. to see who's
I'm
good.
not. I don't do that.
You don't
I
do
don't
it or
do that
not?
anymore.
Oh, I still do it.
I
I don't
don't
do
do
that
that.
anymore. I don't
I
do
don't
that
do
anymore.
that. I didn't do it prior. Like you guys were doing it. But the only time I actually did it is when I had my kid and I was actually up at that time. Like I was
I
up, so I'm like,
used to,
okay, like let me
buddy.
check the phone. But like I don't
I
put alarms at 3
I
a.m.
used to
for.
have alarms going off at 3 a.m. Roll out of bed, turn on my computer,
But
half
like,
asleep,
how
pick up
many
players,
championships did
like
that get you?
zero, and
Like
I'm
in the
never
end,
doing it again. That's it.
you see.
Not a
Like,
single
but
one.
seriously,
Not a
like
single one.
that's what it comes down to. Like everyone who
But the
does it, like
commitment
did it
is
really?
there, ladies and
Did
gentlemen,
it
and
really?
that's why this podcast is important.
That's
We
what
are
counts.
committed to the cause.
That's what counts.
And look, I actually the question that follows here will give you kind of an example of what it looks like when early on into the season and someone comes down. So they ask if a player like CMC goes down week one, how much FAB are you spending on his backup if knowing he's out long term, whereas it could be season,
Okay.
half the season, whatever it is. Like what do you guys think, Raj?
Yeah, so it does depend on the injury, on the length. It depends on the depth that I have. For me, one thing that I hold near and dear is that not every backup is a good player. Like just because you have a handcuff doesn't mean he's like I wasn't rushing to go get Zeke last year when Ramondre was injured. Like I was like I don't care about Zeke. Like he's not good enough for me to blow Fab. In CMC's case, he has I think there's Mason, but we know Elijah Mitchell is actually a really good player. When
Yeah.
before CMC was traded for Mitchell looked like he was going to be a guy, right? So
Yeah.
knowing how I am with regards to Fab money, that still a bit more conservative. If like a guy like Mitchell's case, where there's proof of concept that he's a good player, I'd be willing to go 30 to 40%. But if I have good replacements on the bench, maybe I'll go. Maybe I won't go as much. It really depends, right? Like, but I think if you have a really good read on if the replacement is good, I think you kind of have to go 30 to 40% if it's a long term injury.
I agree with all your points except for the percentage. Like I'm like more like 50 to 60% because
I was gonna say that.
because it's and when I say I agree with your points is because the backup is not necessarily as good as a starter, and I think in CMC's case that's 100% correct. Although Elijah Mitchell has proven that he can be the guy, but CMC is a unicorn. He's a beast apart, right? Like so, it doesn't matter who you're going to be putting in his slot. You're never going to get those numbers of protection. You're never going to get the same numbers, but you're still going to get a guy that's going to command that backfield in that spectacular offense. And I think being sure that you're still going to get an every week starter, even he's probably still going to put you up RB1 numbers realistically. At worst, low end
100%,
RB1.
Yeah.
100%.
So like a 60% of your budget, making sure that you're going to have a player for the remainder of the season, I think is where I'm standing on this. Like
And
wouldn't yeah.
to agree with that point, basically with the fab, like this player, you're going to spend 40, let's say 40 to 60%. That's what I had, 40 to 60% on CMC's backup, knowing that he's gone long term. Let's say he's out for the year.
Okay.
You're spending 40 to 60%. You have this guy from week one to week 15 or whatever it is, week 16, whenever it finishes, keeping money sometimes to towards the end, or you want to keep like a huge budget and you pick some guy up in week 13. That value that you spend on that guy is not the same value as if you had him for the whole season. And the guy I compare it to is Puka Nacua last year. After week one, balled out. I think Nick spent, I think it was 40% of his fab, and he had him for the remainder of the year, and that was a huge difference maker on his roster.
I think sorry, Fab, to cut you off. I think if that happens this year, same type of like Nakua production, I think it's going for more because I think we were kind of newbies. We're like,
For
oh, how
sure.
much do we put?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Nakua in some of my leagues went for $70
Yeah.
at the beginning of the
Yeah.
year. Like,
He's a league winner.
Yeah,
yeah,
100%. He
yeah.
wins. So was Kyron Williams, the same thing. And like I picked him up for like I think 40% of my, and I thought that was a lot at the time because again, you were completely apprehensive of using it. Then last year, a lot of budgets got busted in the first 2 or 3 weeks, like because that's when you see a lot of players that are coming out of the woodworks that nobody really
But you
expected.
know what?
And it's just something to take note of too from a fat budget perspective. To go back to the previous question about like pros and cons, like don't be surprised if a lot of your budget is being blown in the
Yeah.
first 2 or 3 weeks because
But that's where the value is, right?
yeah, and everybody has the same budget at the beginning, right? And everybody is wanting to get that league winner, and a lot of the times those guys they come out in the first 4 weeks of the season, realistically, right? With injuries, with new guys coming up, or rookies making a huge impact that you wouldn't necessarily expect them to make right away, and
QBs, I think, is a big one. When
QBs
QBs go
too, yeah,
down, that's
QBs,
the
QBs is
biggest one.
especially
huge,
for us.
yeah,
That's the in a
especially for
QB
us,
league.
yeah,
It's. I remember
great point.
Gardner Minshew. Remember Gardner Minshew went for like $46 last year.
Oh yeah,
That's why Sty was mad. I think because he lost Richardson. And
Oh
then
right, right, and
they,
he couldn't get. But that's it. But you see, that's where it comes. Where I think now he's going to have more experience, noting that like, hey, if you want your guy, sometimes you got to go pay for your guy,
yes,
and I think
but
that's what I think it was Guido who picked him up,
yeah, but
and I
Max,
think
that's
that's what he
end of the
explained.
season. But that's end of the season, Max. So you do. It's a damn if you do, damn if you don't. Where if you
For
blow too
sure.
much, like
Look,
man, you're
you got to
like
be certain. You got
and
to be
that's
certain.
yeah, and that's how you need depth. Like the first order of business is trying to draft a team where you have a good amount of depth. Easier said than
One
done,
million percent.
but that allows you
But
to
he
say,
was
hey,
depleted.
he was
That was
depleted.
depleted
Yeah,
at
exactly.
QB.
Yeah, so
Yeah. All right, we'll move on with that. Next question: with the contract concerns surrounding CeeDee Lamb and the downgrade, the QB downgrade for Justin Jefferson, is Tyreek Hill your clear cut WR1 in 2024?
those three names, you put them in a bag, you take one out, there's your wide receiver one. I have no issue with it. I think, honestly, I think it comes down to preference. I think unanimously, everyone's going to go for CD Lamb as wide receiver one this year. A lot of people are putting them as their first ADP, and that's fine. He really blew up last year. JJ is still the king, and then Tyreek Hill is always going to be like a top end wide receiver. Like, it's just a matter of, do you think Tyreek Hill is going to give you wide receiver numbers when you're picking him at that spot? And if honestly, I can see that happening, for all the reasons that were just mentioned now. But at the same time, for me, I would still actually have Justin Jefferson as my number one, and then CD Lamb as two, and then Tyreek three. That's how I would go. And it's really like ask me tomorrow what's going to change. Like, I mean, we're talking about three guys that are exactly the same, in my opinion, for where they can be ranked. But
Yeah,
to answer
I
the
mean,
question quickly, no, all these other items do not concern me. No.
I'm also gonna go CD Lamb first. There's zero competition. He's under contract, so he's got no leverage really. Like he's gonna be back. He's gonna be there week one, and he's gonna ball. I think he's your undisputed WR1 again this year. And as far as Justin Jefferson, I think he's QB proof. Last four games last year were with Nick Mullins, and he had multiple 120 plus yard games with I think 3 touchdowns down the stretch. So I think he's your number two for sure. And look, Tyreek Hill is just you still have Waddle there, right? So there is a chance where your numbers could dip a little bit. He's getting a bit older. I still have Lamb, Jefferson, Tyreek. But like you said, you put them in a blender and it could change overnight, right? It's really going to depend on what these guys do. But I think Lamb, there's zero competition for him.
I have CD too. I think Tyreek will have a great season. The age 30 scares me a bit, and I think
Yeah, he's
I think
older.
this is his last really big year. Because at 31, and you start to see some of these elite wide receivers, they're not in the top 5 anymore of PPR, like fantasy points. They start ending up closer to like top 6, top 7. They're not they don't stay as bona fide WR1s just like Diggs we're seeing. So
Just quickly, CD Lamb averaged 0.2 points more per game than Tyreek Hill last year. So like we're talking about splitting hairs here, you know. So if you want to take Tyreek Hill number 1 overall or number 1 wide receiver,
Yeah, he
yeah,
finished 25. I think it was 25 points more than him
yep,
last year. So it
exactly.
was 25 or 30 points more than him last year. No, for sure. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying Tyreek Hill has Waddle there, and Justin Jefferson has Addison, right? Who's still gonna chew into it a bit.
Yeah,
Like CeeDee
sure.
Lamb has Brandon Cooks, who's what 32, 33. Like he doesn't have competition. Like he's just gonna get peppered again with close to 200
Yeah.
targets. So
Yeah.
I don't see that changing, barring injury, basically. Next question is, where does Mostert get picked among running backs? So basically, right now they've got him slotted at about running back 24, which to me seems kind of correct. He's going. We're going to see him with who he's going before him. Before him, you have names like Stevenson, Connor, Kamara, Aaron Jones, Zamir White. Like I'm not expecting 20 TDs again with Mostert, and I think we mentioned it, if not last week, the week before. But there's a split in that backfield as well, right? There's Etienne who's there. They drafted another guy as well. So I think on most weeks he's that low end WR2 flex play, right? So I think personally for me, running back 24 is, I think I'm more than okay with it.
Yeah, I think Mostert's going to surprise people. I think Achan or sorry if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Devon is being overdrafted. Like it's a little bit too high for my liking. We mentioned that last week too, and I think that Mostert being like you said, running back 24. I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes a low end 20s. Sorry, low end teens. Like if it actually
What?
breaks the 20s.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
man. Like
You're not
it's an
concerned that
even.
you're not concerned about the age 31 season?
And
He's
split
a
backfield.
young 31 though. Like I know we say that there's not that much tread on the tires for a regular
I
31
hate
year
that.
old,
I
and he's
hate that.
But
still
he's an
quick
injury
though.
prone
He's
31
an injury.
also.
Well, that's
Yeah,
also
yeah,
why
exactly.
there's not that much tread, right? And he played a full slate of games last season. I
Yeah, but
guess
he's
they
not
managed his workload.
Wolverine.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I think he's gonna have a better than expected season. I think he'll actually do better than
So
running back 24.
it so he'd be a guy he would be like a do not draft type of guy for me personally. And Nak, I'm not sure where you found that ranking, but I saw ESPN PPR had him at 33. And no, but it's all good. Like they're all different ratings, but they have him like Najee, Zach Moss, Tyjae Spears, Javante Eckler, and Tony Pollard were all ahead.
Mhm.
And
I don't like all those names,
yeah,
to
so
be
it's like
honest.
the thing is it depends where you get him. Like if you could get him in the 30s, I think it's a good move. Getting him around the range where FAAB is saying, I'm really out. I'm
No,
really out. And
high teens.
No,
There's no way.
I'm
I'm
That's why I
saying
said
that's where
24,
he's going to
24,
oh,
finish.
that's where he's gonna
24.
finish. Okay.
That's
Oh,
where he's
okay,
going to
okay,
finish. You're not
okay.
going to get him at that spot. I think you're going to get him much later. I think people are fading him, but I'm higher on him at his current ADP. And from a zero RB perspective, if you have that strategy in fantasy, I think Mostert is a
I
great guy to get
yeah.
because at worst they're splitting the backfield. Like
I
at
don't.
worst,
Then why did they
Isaiah.
draft Jalen Wright though? Like it's just a
Yeah, but at,
weird.
at worst, you're saying at worst, like at worst, the split backfields is not finishing. Like where did think about the split backfields, like where these guys finished in a split backfield. Whereas like if everyone is showing that HN is going running back 9, that means there's some news out there somewhere that like HN is going to be the starter, right? Like if like
No,
you think
I wouldn't correlate that though. I wouldn't correlate
yeah,
that.
no, I
really you
think
don't
no.
like that big of a gap?
People
You
see
don't
like
think
7
HN
yards a
starts?
carry and they get like so excited with
For
Achan. And then
sure,
yeah,
for
and they
sure.
got that
But
what he got an 80-point burger or whatever it was, like that one game where he put up like 60 points and they get so
yeah,
listen, it's fantastic. But the reason why that happened is because you have Mostert in the background too. You know what I mean? Like I feel like they use their weapons very well, and Mostert is still one of their weapons.
moving on here. Next question. What is Demario Douglas's upside in New England's offense?
Who's this guy?
Pop Douglas. I had honestly at first I was like Demar like the linebacker. I was like,
No,
oh yeah,
no, that's the Patriots.
yeah,
That
it's
guy, he came on a
Pop
bit
Douglas,
last
right?
year.
We're all talking about Pop Douglas.
Pop,
Yeah, it's
Oh
his
yeah,
nick.
his nickname is Pop Douglas.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
Pop Douglas.
is
yes,
it?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's how much we know about him.
This
So
is a
his upside.
niche question.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to spend too much time here. I think his upside is not great. That offense is terrible.
Well, the wide
And there's
receiver room is
there's
crowded, by
and
the
that's
way.
what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm
Like,
gonna say, look, there's Douglas, there's Bourne, there's Juju, there's Osborne. They just drafted that guy Polk and
yes,
Baker.
yes,
Right now, he's going as Douglas is going as wide receiver 75 off the
Yeah,
board,
I didn't see him
and
ranked.
Polk is going 78. Like, I will definitely take a shot at Polk before I draft Demario Douglas. Like, Polk is rumored to be
yeah.
like really good and might have a bigger role in that offense, and we'll see what that offense looks like. But I don't know if I'm. This is kind of dart throw for me, and I'll go Polk before I go
Well,
Douglas.
let's try to answer the question. So, what's his upside? Like wide receiver 4?
Less.
So you're wide receiver 5. So you think he's
This
gonna
is
finish like
he's wide receiver 75 right now. Wide
so?
receiver
That's wide
75.
receiver 8 or something like that.
That's like
That's
stash.
nothing
That's like
drafted.
that's exactly like, yeah, I don't even know if you're drafting this guy.
If he's wide receiver 75, he's not going drafted.
Well, not necessarily. If everyone has four, well,
Uh,
actually, yeah, it's true.
well, you know who's going to draft him? The guy who asked this question.
Ask the question. Yeah. Well, maybe not after he listens to the pod. I think we can move on. We got a little tight end questions actually coming up. Some interesting questions here. What tier do the top tight ends compare to the wide receiver tier? So I think I'm reading that as he means in what wide receiver tier are you more likely to take like a top tight end? Is that how you guys see it too?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's how
yeah.
I understand it too. Yeah, yeah.
All right. Raj, what do you think?
So for this, the way I see it is to get a tight end that is basically the equivalent of a WR1. That tight end needs to be in the upper 200s, like 300 points per year to get WR1 elite status. So obviously that's Travis Kelce. So I looked at Kelce. His two best PPR seasons were in 2020, where he had 312 fantasy points, and
Jesus.
2022, where he had 316 points, both in PPR. So it's crazy. In
Sorry.
2020, that would have been the fourth best wide receiver season, and in 2022, it would have been tied for the fourth best wide receiver season. So
Insane.
To me, Kelce is the only one who's going to be doing this for a while. I don't see a scenario where I would pick anyone who would mimic that type of production, unless Kelce somehow comes back from the past year and regains that fountain of youth and becomes healthy again. I don't think there's going to be a tight end who usurps that level of production personally. But that's what you have to get to.
So that would fall like in as of like low end wide receiver 1
Well,
type of.
what
No,
tier of wide receivers would that fall under?
look,
That you'd pick, let's say Kelce over that tier of wide receivers.
look, those stats, like those two seasons were fourth best, like in 2020
Yeah,
and
and that's
2022.
tier
So
1. You can
that's tier
argue that's
one.
right.
Fourth
Yeah,
best
that's
is
tier 1.
like, it's tier
Okay,
one.
but
Yeah.
let's say I think for sure he probably means like today's stand. Like if you were drafting today, like where would you be comfortable taking let's say a LaPorta or a Kelce, in what tier of wide receivers where you would bypass, like me, let's say I put you'd have to go at least tier 3 where there's like Ayuk, Debo, Mike Evans, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Olave. Like that's tier
Yeah.
3, that's tier 3 wide receivers, and that's the only, like, and the tier before you have like guys like Puka, Garrett Wilson, AJ Brown and Amon Ra. I'm
I would
not
agree with
picking.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm not picking a tight end
Yeah.
before all those guys, but I could potentially take a Kelce or a Laporta in the third round before a Mike Evans or an Ayuk or a Debo.
I
Right?
got it.
I think we're in
Yeah.
agreement with
Yeah,
that.
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree with
exactly.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. My point was, I don't think there's anyone who's mimics top one right now, and
No,
even
no, no,
and
no,
even top
No.
no.
two.
And my first, like I
No.
said, my first tier would be
Yeah,
wide receiver tier 3.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Okay, I guess this kind of piggybacks on that. Like, what makes a tight end premium? Like, how many more PPR points is the norm? And again, I think he means how many more PPR points make a tight end premium over like an average guy. I think that's how I kind of see it. But I think we just touched upon it. Like the
Yeah.
guy has to have. I think it's a similar kind of question. Like the guy
Yeah.
has to have that
300
massive, like Travis Kelce production in order for you to like go and
Gronk
surpass.
style. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Plus,
exactly. Gronk style.
and I think this year is a bit of an outlier too, because the tight end position is also very
There's
deep.
so many. There's so many. Yeah.
You're gonna be if you're having a conversation between Kelce and like a Garrett Wilson, like obviously it's gonna be Garrett Wilson because
And
2 or 3 rounds after you can pick up you can probably maybe 2 rounds after you might be able to get an Andrews, but like then there's also Trey McBride that exists out there as well. There's a Dalton
yeah,
Kincaid's of the world. Like it's very deep, right? So I think this year the tight end premium might be a little bit smaller than years past. Like
But there's
when
more depth.
yeah,
yeah. And look.
yeah,
The last year, LaPorta was tight end 1. He finished with 153 points, and McBride was 10th with 100.
That's crazy.
yep,
So there's only a 53-point gap between 1 and 10 last year, and I feel like that gap is going to shrink because we
100%.
do have a lot more better,
Yeah.
Yeah.
More better.
tight ends. Okay, one last tight end question here. Would you draft Sam LaPorta ahead of Kelce and Andrews this year? Fab.
I think it's again we've been talking about tight ends for the last like 10 little minutes over here. I think at their current ADP and how I value the tight end position based on everything you just said, I would actually take Andrews at his current ADP, and that's not to discredit Laporta or Kelsey. I think they're great. I think they're fantastic spots. I think they're very good at the tight end position. But Nike, you just hit on it, right? Like the difference between tight end 1, 2, and 3 is not as it's not that big to make you want to not have a stronger wide receiver room or running back room, or especially because we play in 2 quarterbacks. I'm gonna be prioritizing quarterbacks in like rounds 2 or 3, where some other people might be taking like a Travis Kelce in round 2. I'll be taking a quarterback, or a Sam Laporta in round 3, and I'll be taking a quarterback because you just want to have depth at the position that's the most important. And when you can argue that Kyle Pitts, who's going as tight end 8 or 9 right now, has a chance of finishing as a top 5 tight end. Yes, Roger, we roll your eyes. That's fine. But like
I
realistically
closed
speaking,
them.
it's good
I
enough.
should cover my ears.
Thank you. But you guys know what I'm saying, right? I mean, like it's what you're giving up for what you're getting. For me, it's a non-question. And so of those 3, I would take Andrews at his current ADP, which might be in the later rounds. I want to say around 3 or 4. I don't know off the top of my head, but I know it's definitely later than Porter and Kelsey, and I'd be totally comfortable with that. Totally comfortable with that.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think he's just asking pretty like, would you take him ahead of Kelce or Andrews? Like, is he a better player or a better option? And like, look, I'll be the guy that says yes. I'll take Laporta over Kelsey and Andrews. Kelsey is getting older. We just talked about age and production in a season, and I know that the Baltimore coaching staff has been in love with Likely. He actually did come in and played really really well. So I think
Yeah,
they're gonna try to get them both involved, which is going to limit or maybe not limit, but cap
yeah,
Andrews' production this year, and might
that's a good
want to
point.
keep him fresher for the playoffs and actually available for the playoffs, right? Where he was hurt late in the season, so I could see that being an issue with Andrews.
It's a great point.
Raj?
Guys, I just think it's wild where we don't talk about Evan Ingram enough. He had like 114 catches last year, man. Like I would add him to that discussion too, and that's why I
Wow,
would be okay
in this
with
tier.
but I would be okay with 114 catches, man. Like 900 yards. It's
No, he balled.
PPR. He's bald. Like so that's why I would be okay with not taking Laporta and going a little later.
Guys, we're not talking about Trey McBride. We're talking about Evan Ingram. Like Trey McBride balled out too. Like there's
Guys, there's
so
a
many.
lot. There's a
Yeah,
lot
there's
this year.
so many.
There's
There's
a
so
lot.
many.
There's a lot. I think
Yeah,
like spending high on a tight end this year is going to be a foolish mistake.
exactly.
It's at your own peril,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, yeah.
With that being said, whoever asked this question, please go ahead. Spend on tight ends.
This person really, these people really are curious about tight ends.
Yeah, there was a lot. There was a lot of tight end questions.
It's good.
Um,
It's good.
Pause.
yeah, it was good. So we get to our final question here. This is actually a pretty cool one. I really really like this question. Both in their prime, who are you taking, Marshall Faulk or LaDainian Tomlinson? Raj,
This is
I know you're a huge fan of both.
I love this era of football. This is really tough.
Yeah.
Fantasy, it's probably LT. Like he had like 9 double-digit touchdown seasons. He has a single season rushing record of 31 TDs. He had like 2,300 total scrimmage yards twice and 160 touchdowns total. But I think I was going back and forth. I think I have to go Faulk because he was like, to me, Marshall Faulk is the best running back wide receiver, like out of the backfield
Yeah.
catching passes ever. Like
Yeah.
forget about
Yeah.
CMC. Like
Yeah.
he lined up at wide receiver constantly with the Rams.
Greatest show on turf.
Greatest show
Yeah.
on turf. He had 5 straight seasons of 80 catches and 3 straight seasons where he had 900, 1,000, and 800 yards. Like absolutely electric stuff. But like it's why it's tough because I think their teams asked those guys to do different things. LT was more running up the middle. Faulk was perfect for that offense. But stylistically and visually, I have to go Faulk just by a hair.
FAAB?
I mean, I will go LT just for the stats that Roger was talking about too. Like if we're talking about his prime, so I'm taking out the best year he's ever had in his career, and you have that season of 28 rushing touchdowns and all that, and that's kind of what you want in a running back. But it's also, I mean, Roger hit on the the receptions consistently for Marshall Faulk, right? And it's PPR monster, but I think we'll still go LT. But either way, you can't go wrong.
You can't go
Like
wrong, man.
Yeah, man. Like
But
this
this
is
is
that
also
was the first
this is
thing
a
I
great
said. It's like
question
such
though.
a
This is
great
this is a
question
good
because you could
question.
debate this, but me too. Look, they were both monsters in PPR, fantasy football, and regular football. Like they were literally both monsters, and they were cheat codes, basically, right?
Yeah,
Like LT single handedly won you fantasy leagues, like without a doubt. Like 31 TDs. Like,
that was
that's
the
like
era.
it
But that
doesn't make any sense. And honestly, the only reason why I chose LT in this whole discussion is because I remember watching him more than I did Marshall Faulk. I was more into football later on, and I saw LT a lot
Yeah.
more. That's my only reason for choosing LT over Faulk. But like, that's it.
I just want to add something else. So you know how like whenever whoever gets the first overall pick in their draft, like it's not always fun. Like I know Knack in your scenario, like it's easy to take Josh Allen, but years pass, right? It's always a little bit more difficult because you're not sure like which one, like which player to take, running back, wide receiver, quarterback. I think for the period that Falk and Tomlinson were like just owning the fantasy landscape, it was the one time where like it was fun having your number one pick, where like you knew the guy that you were getting was going to play all 16
Yeah.
games. He's going to carry the rock the entire time. They're going to run the wheels off him, and he's going to bring you to fantasy point
There was
every single week, like nonstop.
there was some Sean Alexander season sprinkled in there
Yeah,
too, where he was an absolute
Oh
beast.
yeah.
yeah, that's I remember forgot about him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that concludes all of our questions for this evening. I want to thank all of you guys who took the time to write us all these questions. Really much appreciated. We're definitely going to do this again. Definitely a segment that we love to do. We love answering the questions. And honestly, if you guys want hints or more ways to use, like you see the FAAB question, that was excellent. If there's anything you don't understand from fantasy perspective, we'd love to hear and answer questions. It could be any time. You don't have to wait for a mailbag episode either. So just comment on anything, like, subscribe. Um, you can go ahead and follow us on all the social media outlets. So we're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all Bush League Huddle. On Twitter, it's without the E. You could watch us on Spotify, on YouTube, Apple, wherever really you get your podcasts. And yeah, guys, thank you guys once again. That concludes our episode tonight. So we'll see you guys again next week. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Peace out.